through some of the training from Parkland, which is a little disturbing but very important, and lessons learned. And I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, you can roll through. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I apologize if I'm coughing. I've been a little under the weather this week, so bear with me, please. Unfortunately, this subject matter is pretty tough, so I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Parkland. That was the catalyst to actually get our program started and get us in here. This is about so there was a report about this. How many are familiar, have seen this report? Has anybody? No, maybe just a couple. All right, so just a brief rundown before it gets started. There was a report about Parkland. In Parkland, there is many failures on so many levels as to why this happened. And this report basically breaks it down from an educator's standpoint, from a law enforcement standpoint, from a parent. It is painful to see this because this could have been prevented or lessened so many times. But I think it's important that we see this and go through this. And I think everybody should see this, parents, students, anybody. But it's important to kind of see this, and even though it's, you know, there's nothing super graphic in here, but just the knowledge that we have as to what happened, and then the fact that you know that this could have been stopped. So it's important to watch this and kind of see, because we can learn from this. So it's going to start out, and basically it goes here, and I encourage you all, if you want to send a link out. So after this, you can all watch this. She's going to put a link out. It's only a few minutes, and it really breaks down second by second, minute by minute, what's happening, and unfortunately the failures on so many levels. But basically what happens is, as you go through this, you'll start to see some people move around. There was a security monitor who saw Mr. Cruz. They knew that he shouldn't have been there. So basically, he was not allowed on campus, obviously. One of the initial failures was the security monitor wasn't even a security monitor. He was a coach, teacher, who had been suspended. He was supposed to be fired for, I believe it was sexual harassment or something, and somebody overturned that and decided that no, we're not going to fire him, but since he can't be around the kids, we'll make him a security monitor. He wasn't trained as a security monitor, and they put him in this position. He knew about Cruz. All the staff, everybody knew about Cruz. If you see this guy on campus, immediately call 911 because of what he said. And this guy, this is the first failure, he sees him on campus carrying a gun bag, not a book bag, not a duffel bag, a rifle case. So he sees him doing this, and he doesn't do anything. You know, that's so there's a lot of mind-boggling things that are happening here, but you got to do something. But he shouldn't even have been in that position anyway. But so as this scrolls through, you'll start to see. So as it's going up, so it's showing you he sees Cruz, and you know, the report talks about Cruz most likely to shoot up the school. So as this goes through, you can kind of read that. Now, a few things that they talk about. So like we learned, you don't use jargon. You want to keep things really simple. So we call it a lockdown, right? A lockdown, there's no confusion. That is the highest level. It's not a lockout, it's a lockdown. They have code red. Different thoughts, but my thought is it's a lockdown, you know, because maybe some people don't know what a code red is here, right? So in this school, I've heard we have maintenance sometimes calls like a code green or whatever. So I don't know what that is, but when I hear that, I think like, what is that? And so I'm thinking, right, so I think of like code red. So you know, when you're doing a lockdown, you want lockdown. So there's some things, and some other things too. They had experts come into the school to assess where their deficiencies were, and two different groups came and said, here are your deficiencies, and they basically said, thank you very much, and did nothing on what they suggested. So, Cruz enters in, 2:21, so 1 minute and 22 seconds. So everything happens so fast. That's another thing, like, from the time it starts to the time it's over is not a lot of time. Taylor, can you go back? So, campus. Okay, so it's another monitor, right? So I believe two or the first 3 people that saw Cruz did not do anything. So, and you'll find also as it goes on, as this goes on, another student runs into Cruz. Cruz is loading his weapons. Cruz says, hey, you better get out of here. It's going to get messy. You know, and that student runs off. Very lucky student. I believe he went and alerted somebody, and then, but the thing is, one of the main things you want to learn about this is, if you see something, immediately do something. So right here, that's Cruz loading his weapons. He tells that kid, hey, you want to get out of here? See right there. So just stopping that, right? So that kid went in there, and there is Cruz loading up these weapons. And so a main thing is anybody here can call a lockdown. Anybody, if you see anything, right? So these are some pretty serious. A student like that carrying a rifle bag, like, not subtle, but this could have been stopped. So hopefully this never happens. But if it's a situation, you know, early calling a lockdown, you know, if you think, should I call a lockdown? Probably a good chance you should call a lockdown. If somebody, anything like this, do it and get the word out. So better safe than sorry. So, hold on, if you can go down a little bit. So, all right, just scroll up a little bit. No, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, so Cruz kills 6 students in these classrooms. Another thing that we found out through this is the lockdown, it works. So the deaths, so there were 3 floors in the 1200 building. Where the students were locked in their rooms, out of sight, that is where there was the most success on survival and the most unsuccessful attempt by him. So in the situation where students were in the hallways, obviously that's going to be the worst. So locking down, taking it seriously, and I know everybody does, taking it seriously, getting out of sight, that is proven to save lives. This talks about the 2 security experts, headed by Stone and Douglas administrators and teachers. It talks about hard corners.
Hello, Brett, coming down the High School, and I think there's a shooter.
Hello? You still there? Talk to me, please.
So it talks about repeated failures to call code red, how so many people had the opportunities to put a stop to this or to alert people that this was going on. And it just kind of, and it could be a situation like we just talked about. Oh, maybe you think somebody else is going to do it, or you're questioning whether you have the authority to do it, or you're questioning whether it's the right thing to do. Clearly it was the right thing to do.
911, what is your emergency?
Yes, I just got a call from Douglas High School. A female on the line, they believe there's a shooter at the school.
Okay, at Douglas High School in what
Yes,
city?
in Parkland. It's 901
Oh, okay. 5901 Pine Island?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if they're working anything there. And second-hand information of a student?
A female called in. It sounded like possible shots in the background. I think I heard 5 or 6 in 2 different bursts.
So there's a little bit of a problem there because it has to get dispatched to another agency. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about that here. If somebody calls 911, the same agency that's handling it is sending everybody. So.
Julian 3, 17 Bravo 3, 17 Bravo 4.
Julian 3, we have possible, could be firecrackers. I think we got shots fired. Possible shots fired. 1200 buildings.
Attention all units in District 15, possible shots fired at 5901 Pine Island Road at Stoneman Douglas High School. Possible shots fired at Stoneman Douglas High School.
Hey, doing around.
So this is pretty important here, if you can just go back a little bit. Okay. So some teachers, probably hearing the gunfire below, had taken steps to protect the children. They had covered the windows in the classroom doors. Shooters could not get in. So you see what happens on the first floor, and it wasn't a failure on the teachers or anything. They weren't expecting that. So what happened on the first floor, obviously the teachers and staff on the second floor hear this going on. You see what happens on the second floor. Nothing, which is a miracle. It's great, and that's exactly how you would want it. Yeah, so, he's going to the door. So this is his path. He went door, 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 door. He's trying to get in every door. I mean, you obviously know what he's trying to do, and it didn't work. So when he couldn't do that, he went to another floor. So that is a success right there.
Julian 3, make sure we get some units over here. I need to shut down Stoneman Douglas. The intersection.
10-4.
So this shows, there's the 1200 building in red where this is going on. Peterson is the deputy and Medina is one of the staff, so. And this is why I think I talk a little bit about this. So in a lockdown, if the school is on lockdown and a fire alarm goes off, you have to weigh, like, am I gonna go out into the hallway? Because if there is rapid gunfire, what it turns out, so he didn't pull the fire alarms. The smoke from his fire alarm set off the smoke alarms, or set off the, fire alarm. So that, unfortunately, that can happen, right? So you would have to weigh, here at Galway, we're kind of fortunate everything is on the first floor. So if you had to exit through a window, but if you're in a lockdown situation and the fire alarm goes off, my advice is do not run out into the hallway. So if you see fire or you are in a situation where you and your students need to escape due to fire or smoke, then make that decision. If you don't see fire or smoke, hold off, because you don't know. You don't know what the situation is. If somebody was going to do a school shooting, they may pull smoke, they may pull a fire alarm and get everybody out in the hall. So during a lockdown, unless you see you know, unless you see fire or you think you are in imminent danger from that, I would avoid that. So as this is going on, so this is less than 5 minutes in, other law enforcement are starting to come. So, I hate to criticize, so I'll take a minute to talk about this. So I hate to criticize other law enforcement, you know, anybody in a profession, you don't want to talk negatively about somebody in that profession. So, but it is what it is, you know, you got to call it like you see it. So my opinion, the opinion of many in law enforcement, Deputy Peterson, he dropped the ball. It is what it is. You can't really, I don't think you can look at it any differently. We are trained, the Saratoga County Sheriff, State Police, we're trained differently. Given this situation, I am not trained in the way that he is, so things would be different, things will be different. The things that department did, there was a lot of breakdowns in law enforcement. Everybody should have been rushing towards the 1200 building to go in. That's just the bottom line. There's no other way about it. There's no blocking off intersections down there. You know, that can come later after other law enforcement is back. The initial law enforcement has to go into the 1200 building. That is what it is. He should have been in the 1200 building. So unfortunately, that's a major failure. So 5 minutes and 32 seconds before a code red is called, which is unacceptable.
Daniel, do I hear shots fired by the football field? Shots fired by the football field.
Shots fired by the football field, heard.
Yeah, so restrooms locked, students can't escape the gunman. So they had a vaping problem, not uncommon, so they had locked the restrooms to prevent the vaping. Obviously, that became a tragedy. Even if you have a vaping issue, as many schools do, you can't lock. You have to give the students a chance to hide. And as you can see here, this is why. So this is really important, and I believe, as you were talking, that if you wanted to mention about how.
Well, there's also new regulation that's saying that we're going to have to address our vaping a different way because New York State no longer allows locking of the bathrooms, and that's a very recent decision. But I mean, I think after review of this, we understand why.
So there was a lot of things that were done wrong. However, there were some people that did some phenomenal things, which is really good. Excuse me. So as you see here, yeah, so none of the dead, as she was just are in the classrooms. So I think that's key. That is your best bet. Down there, obviously, they have the hurricane glass. He was shooting out at staff, students, and officers, and he wasn't able to get to them. He had a very high-powered weapon, as you can see.
Let's call lockdown, gentlemen.
Yeah, so, I mean, the fact that it took that long is just unacceptable, you know, and that could have been done, you know, and that's what he is trained to do. Obviously that is a situation where everybody is going to be stressed out, it's going to be panic, but you still need to be able to do that. Call a lockdown immediately. So you're seeing more law enforcement arrive. But unfortunately, so that department, initially, they were trained that they're to go towards the threat. However, the former sheriff, who was just relieved by the governor, he changed the policy to may. They don't have to. So they basically kind of stood around and tried to figure out a plan of action, and which we don't, that's not how we operate. So we would go in, and it was the neighboring police agency, Coral Springs, that actually were the ones who showed up, because Broward County wasn't even going in. So Coral Springs showed up and said, well, we're just going in. And they're the ones who actually went in. Some of the officers who were driving around, they didn't have their vest on, so they had to stop, put their equipment on. And then they just kind of they stayed there. I mean, it's an extremely scary event, so it's hard. I hate having to say that but you have to go towards the school.
All units on the shot fire, stay on main.
So in that video, you can hear the gunshots. So that cop can hear the gunshots, So that talks about how he walked out of the building and then out into the street. And so that's a video of him running away.
Alex, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
So that right there, in case did anybody not hear that? So that is Deputy Peterson saying, do not approach the 1200 building. He's saying this to other law enforcement. He's saying, do not approach the 1200 building. Stay at least 500 feet away. I don't even know what to say to that. So it's the complete opposite, but. There was a delay in the footage, so I don't know if many of you guys have heard about this, but when the police came in, so they started watching the footage to try to see, thinking that he was there, or if he was there. They didn't know he had already left. They started watching the footage, and they asked, is this footage live? They were told, yes, it's live. It was a mistake. It was actually on a 20-minute delay. So they were thinking, they were watching Cruz in the thing. He had already left. He had dropped his stuff, and he was at McDonald's. So some of this is failures, and some of it is just, it's everything seemed to have gone wrong.
17204. Let's get a command post set up on the south side of the Sawgrass in Coral Springs off of Pine Island. The gate for the student entrance is unlocked. We need to get units in here so we can start trying to find this guy.
This talks about the neighboring department that actually went in. Yeah, so this was talking about Coral Springs had different training. Coral Springs basically has the training that almost every department has now. You're gonna go towards the gunfire.
1701, I want to make sure that we have a perimeter set up, and the school's being, all the kids are getting out, so we need to shut down around the school. This is no for you to have a place where we're setting up for all of you to come into the area.
Check 4.
Going back down toward the second floor. Keep focused, going to the exit of the building.
Is this live anymore? This is live?
Nobody else get on this radio but the camera guy.
Sir, stay up the phone. I don't know the school like you do. I need this information to relay on the radio. No, I don't know the school. But I tell you, ask you a question, give me an answer. Okay, where was he last? This is live, right now. He walked to the second floor or the first floor? No, back to the second floor.
Obviously, in any situation like this, there's gonna be a lot of confusion. Even with professional law enforcement who are squared away and doing their job, and when you have multiple agencies. So he's trying to find out if the video is live, and he's trying to get answers. And as they were all doing this, this is where Cruz was. A common problem with our radios that we carry in schools, we don't get service. I'm actually fortunate enough, my radio works almost everywhere here in Galway, which is shocking. My cell phone doesn't, but my radio does. But in most of the other schools, the radios just don't work. So that's the problem they were finding. As soon as they entered into the building to try to talk, they can't key up. So.
Stand by for further. He dropped the bag near the stairwell. Stand by for further. Call out 48. Is that for recording? Is that getting the school? Yes, sir. They're following them. It's about 20 minutes away. They're following them on video, on the camera. They have an exit in the building running south.
So that basically just gives a brief rundown of what happened, and obviously there's failures at many levels. I think we're in a much better position for many reasons. It's a first floor building, it's a smaller school. We are better protected, and I won't be hiding somewhere for 48 minutes. So.
I'll come and get you.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions on that at all?
You have rules for that already?
Yes, I actually, believe it or not, I do not have. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, man, all right, well. So as any of you know, I always have my gear on, and even on a few Fridays I wear this, right? So have many of you seen. Even when you see me wear this though, I always wear my vest with it. However, today, I did not wear it because somebody said, so tomorrow, are you going to participate in some of the athletic activities? And I said, yes, of course. Are you going to have your vest on? And I said, yes, of course. Okay. I said, you know what, I'm gonna not wear it so I can be a little more athletic. And that's the price I pay. So, yes, point taken.
Okay, you showed in the video and mentioned how students and teachers inside locked classrooms, he was not able to affect. Was it because he was trying to open doors?
Yes.
Because did they have windows?
Doors were locked. They blocked their windows so he couldn't see in.
Okay.
So he was trying to get in classrooms, yes, absolutely. Doors were locked. I mean, it's extremely important that when your class is in session, I know it's very difficult, but I mean, that's a perfect example why if your doors are open, if those doors on the second floor had been open, so 17 people were killed, I mean, the death toll would have been unthinkable.
So he was trying to open classroom
Yeah,
doors?
yeah,
And wasn't able to.
correct.
And then just kept moving.
Correct, yeah. I mean, so you see that he goes from door to door to door to door, and then he's trying for an open door, he's trying for an easy target, and that's a theme that you see within school shooters. They're in the past, the Virginia Tech, he went into classrooms and then left that classroom, tried to get into other ones. When he couldn't get into other ones, went back into the classroom, and they had still not secured their door. So, and it's unfortunate, so he just walked back into a classroom where he already was, and then, unfortunately shot more people. So this is a situation where locking your door is important.
Are our classroom door windows resistant to gunshot?
No, they're not. So, but that's why we talk about the hard corners. So nobody's going to be standing up against those, the glass. So, yep.
What happened to that officer?
What's that?
What were the repercussions for that officer?
So he retired. He had like 30 years on. He had a lot of time on. He probably should have retired before then. It was kind of like I looked into this, and there's been a lot of reports on him. So it was kind of like a cake job. It really was. It was like a job you do at the end of your career. You kind of kick back because nothing's going to happen, and that's how he looked at it. He was not prepared at all. He didn't have the training. A lot of those deputies couldn't even recall the last time they had any active shooter training whatsoever. Their department didn't train with other departments, so it really, they didn't. So they didn't take it seriously, Had he not retired, I don't know. It's Florida, so it's a different state. But the sheriff, I don't know if the sheriff there at the time, he made some really outlandish comments, and he was removed by the governor. So, and our department, we train with the state police, we train with other agencies. We do active shooter training specifically for this, specifically because if this happens, you need to be able to work with other law enforcement, and we train to go in. So I'm not going to be waiting for other people to come because I'm that guy, so that's me. So I'm going to go towards the threat. The next officer that comes in, he's not setting up a perimeter. He's trying to find me. They're trying to find the threat. So that's we're pretty much the opposite thought process. And Coral Springs, which was the neighboring agency, that's kind of along the lines that we take. So.
What is the internal communication like within school? Like, if you're trying to identify an location of the threat so you know which way to run, how does that happen?
It really depends. So there's no cut and dry answer. It is going to depend on whatever the situation is. So if there was, God forbid, a shooting, where do I think I hear the sound? Where am I? What are people saying? Because in a perfect world, everybody locks in, locks down, and there's nobody in the halls. In reality, there's probably some screaming, people running and yelling. Whatever it is, I'm going to use my best judgment and go towards wherever it is, and then I'll determine it from there. So, I mean, obviously gunshots are extremely loud, that's another thing. So we talk about, firecrackers. How many times have people heard firecrackers going off in the hallway? I haven't, it doesn't happen. So if you hear firecrackers, and he's a police officer, he needs to know, he initially says firecrackers and then he says gunshots, it's not firecrackers. So if gunshots are extremely loud. If you hear them, you're gonna know. There's no confusion there. If you hear what you think are firecrackers, it's probably gunshots. So, and you're gonna go to, I'm gonna go towards that, so.
If your radio doesn't work, how do you communicate with your?
My radio does work. Yeah, that's what I was saying. My radio works here in Galway. Our radios work, which is, I can't explain it. I don't know. I don't have cell phone service, but radios they work here. So.
My son goes to the Air Force Academy, and maybe 2 years ago, they had a similar situation where someone thought they saw someone with a gun, and they went on lockdown, and they were told by their AOC not to leave the room, like you said, with a fire drill, but social media took over, and it turned in all of the cadets that were in the rooms were contacted. Like at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm up crying my eyes out because I think my son's gonna get shot. And social media was just going crazy. Parents, kids, they thought they heard gunshots, but they really didn't. So social media, how do you deal with that?
That's gonna happen. So there was a lockdown last year at Paulson Spa. And social media, took effect. It can be good and it can be bad. You can get good information out there. It's tough in a situation like that because in a real lockdown, the administration is locked down too. So,
All the kids have cell phones.
yeah, all kids have cell phones, so they're going to be, everybody's really scared in Boston Spa, so people are texting out. Parents are starting to come. What police found, so we had to set up barricades to actually stop parents from coming in, because obviously as a parent, you're going to go get your child out. I'm going to, unfortunately, no, you're not. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that, but we have to keep everybody safe. So that's going to happen. As far as dealing with it at the time, from my perspective, my priority is safety and trying to determine why we're in a lockdown, where is the threat. The social media and kids texting, I understand it, I get it, it's going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it at the time, so it's just going to happen. Parents are going to start showing up at the school. The law enforcement that shows up are going to be prepared for that. They're going to probably set up a perimeter so that parents can't just start running onto school grounds. So, but that's going to happen, that's inevitable.
Can you review for all of us the safety protocol for when we have children outside?
So when there's children outside, in a lockdown, if a lockdown is called when you are outside the building, my thoughts and what, I believe you want to get away from the building. So you're gonna, if we go into lockdown, which we're only going into lockdown, that's the highest level of threat. You don't want to come into the building, So if you are at the playground, wherever you are, you're going to move towards the wood line. You want to get as far away from the building as you can, and you want to then go to the bus garage. So, and you want to, it can be difficult, obviously, weather depending, but you don't want to be around the building. Because obviously, in a serious situation, you want to put distance between yourself.
How do bus drivers know if there's lockdown? We shouldn't be coming to the school for the buses. Is there an announcement?
Yes, there's an announcement, and are the drivers on the...
I'm not sure. The lockdown, we are going to be at the bus garage as our command center and where our students will get picked up, but as teachers, stay hidden outside for as long as you can and don't move until someone comes to get you, like we'll find you. So I also want to know, like, this is kind of heavy conversation. We have done a risk assessment, threat assessment in our district. Actual active shooter was very low on our risk assessment. More higher on the list was the bus stalker, flu season, MRSA, those kinds of things. So although we need to take it very seriously, and there's no black and white, like if this happens, this happens. A lot of it is gut. I'm sorry, that's just the way, like, a lot of it is instinct, and you're never going to be, you know, you're doing what you think is best for your students, you know, putting them in a closet in the, you know, middle school gym. If that's where you think that that's the best spot for you, you know, then good for you as a teacher. But again, even as much carnage as that was done, he went from door to door, and it's who's available, who was locked out of the bathrooms, who was locked out of the classrooms. So just a terrible conversation to have, which leads me to, if you have additional questions for John, please see him anytime. He's always available and roaming our halls. I want, before we go to our team activity, I want to thank Courtney and the PD committee for our day, and I really appreciate all your hard work. I have personal experience about how much effort and time and goes into doing a superintendent's conference day. And the second thing I want to say is that please take your team activity today seriously. You know, you can go a couple ways with it, but I'm hoping that you'll take, your team will take it seriously, because we are moving into, we're going to build upon our, you know, the video and the last presentation.